Okay, so before going into the project that I've already created for you, what I wanted to do is return back to the Epic Launcher very quickly, just so we can see how we can remove a project that we don't want. So if you've been working on something for a while and you've decided that it's not going anywhere, or just don't need it because it was a prototype or something, quite simply, like I've done here with a project that I knew I wouldn't be keeping, we can come into the Epic Launcher, we can right click on this, and we can just press delete. This will delete the data locally as well, so it gives you a quick warning, and once you've done that, that will remove it from your system entirely. So do make sure that you don't use that by accident, because you will lose the project. And to memory, I don't think it even goes into the recycle bin, so once you make that action, you have lost that project. Okay, but the thing that we're interested in is the project folder that I provided. So if you go to the project files section on Pluralsight for this course, you'll see that I've provided just a single downloadable package. And the way that I've tried doing this is that I have all of the folders set for each specific module that we'll be going through, and each of those folders will have the files and the content which is relevant to the topic that we'll be covering. I've done this just so that we didn't have to download different project files for each different topic that we're covering, because we have such a diverse range of topics that we'll be looking at here. So once you've downloaded that, if you extract it and navigate into that folder, you should see something like this. And for opening somebody else's project that has already been created, the thing that we're interested in is this .uproject file just here. So everything else is just the content and some of the DLLs and metadata for the project, so we can ignore those. But to open somebody else's project or a project that you've been handed, all we need to do is find the uproject file and double click this. As long as you have a matching version open, this will open it in the version it was created in. So again, this was created in 4.17.1 for you. If you don't have that installed, then it will just ask you to update it to something else, and that should be fine. If you need to do a conversion in place or something, you can just upgrade or alter the version that this will be opening with. Okay, so with the project open, what we can see is I've created a room. We'll be working within this room for the entirety of the project, and as we go through different topics, we'll be fleshing out this room with different materials and objects and lighting systems, and we'll be making this a lot more interesting to look at. At the moment over here, I've put this in an unlit mode because I didn't want to get ahead of anything before we actually approach the subject. So if we turn this to be lit, then we'll see that we have complete darkness, apart from if we look out the window where the skylight is there. The reason for this is because we do have a lighting section in this course, so we'll be adding the lights and everything to this room as and when we get there. So a really good way to work within the Unreal Engine anyway is to use the unlit mode, because that way, whilst you're adding things into the world, you still get an idea of what the colours are going to be. So we have a white wall, some black borders, a grey floor and a red wall there. But it doesn't need to incur the overhead of adding lighting and shadows and stuff whilst you're just fleshing the level out. So a lot of level designers I found tend to work in an unlit mode just because it's a little bit less system intensive, and then obviously you make it look really pretty when you're setting up the final effects. So what I wanted to do to finish off the project setup section of the course is we're going to add in some just miscellaneous items into the room. So if we go into the 01_setup folder, you can see we have two things in here. I have our maps folder, so we're in this is currently the main map, which we can see here. And in the project settings, I have set that to be the default map to load when we open a project. So if we have a quick look at what this means, if we go to the project settings tab, which is up here, and if you don't already have that open, we can go to edit and project settings. And what we want to look at is the maps and mode option just over here. And basically we have two different options. We have the editor startup map and the game default map. And the names kind of indicate what they do. So the editor startup map is the level that you'll see when you first open the editor, and the game default is the level that will be loaded once you've built and deployed the game. So when you publish the game and give it to other people, the game default is what they will be loaded in. So when you're developing a game, I tend to set the editor startup map to be the one that I'm working on most often. As I add new levels, I'll change that to be the level which I'll be focusing on the most. And then the game default map's going to be like the main menu or something. So that's how we can set a default map to load in the engine. And then back in the main window, what we want to do is I have a folder for meshes. So this is everything that we're going to add into the level. Now you can make your level look however you like, but I just want to show you how we can add things in, and then we can quickly look at how we move around the world. So to add something into the world, all we need to do is we can grab the object. I'm going to grab the table, and we just drag this into the world. Now, inside of the viewport, we can just right click and move the mouse around, and this will give us a kind of first person-esque feel of looking around the level. And then likewise, sticking with the first person type of movement system, when we're right clicking, if we press W or S, we'll move forward and backwards. And then if we press A or D, we'll move sideways, so we get like a strafing. And then if we press Q or E, we'll move down and up. So this is really how you tend to navigate around the world. You kind of fly to where you want to go. If you have an object selected, like the table, and press F, that's a shortcut for focus. And then if you Alt and left click, you can rotate around the object that you're focused on. And then you can also drag yourself around the world by clicking in the middle mouse button, and scrolling the middle mouse button will zoom you in and out. Don't worry if you can't remember all of this as we go through. This is something that you can just play about with. You can't really damage or ruin anything, so just fly around the world and get used to the controls. But they're the general control schemes that you'll get used to and be using quite a lot whilst developing. Now what we have here is we are in transform mode, so that means that we can drag this around by clicking on the arrows. And this is relating to the details panel over here. We can see the location, and we'll see that changes based on the color of the arrow that we're moving. So left and right is green, forward and back is red, up and down is blue, which is the X, Y, and Z axes. Now if we move this just above the floor, what I wanted to show as well is if we hit the end key, this will snap the table to the floor. So that is now perfectly aligned with the floor. Okay, so I'm going to get the table somewhere I want it to be, roughly in place. And then the next thing I want to do is drag in a candle. And I'm just going to drag the candle onto the table. Now if it can find a decent collision mesh, then what it will do is it will just it will lock the bottom of the candle to the table, as you can see it's done here. So this is already placed on the table perfectly, so we don't need to do the small end key trick. Likewise, I'm going to do the same with the cactus, and it's a little bit big, which is quite handy. So we can have a look at the scale tool. So if we go over here, in the details panel again for the cactus, we can see we have the scale here. We can see that the model's being brought in a little bit too big, so we can scale this down to maybe 0.25. Perfect, okay, so that's 0.25, looks about right. And then we have a nice table cactus. And really what I want you to do now is just keep taking the meshes that I've given you, bring some of your own in if you want to. You'll notice that they don't have materials, and again this has been done on purpose, so everything's kind of got a grey checkerboard at the moment. And in the future module we'll be looking at how to add materials onto this, but for now, just bring things into the world. So we've got some buttons, probably don't need to bring that in. We can add a couch or two in, we've got a light fixture and things like that, so just play around, make your own room if you wanted. But the main thing is just getting used to how we can add objects into the world and learning how to navigate the Unreal Editor. And with that said, the final thing which is going to be really important are the shortcuts for transform, rotate, and scale. So we've seen we're in transform mode. The shortcut for that is W. Now if we press E or R, so on the QWERTY keyboard they're kind of in line, E will take you into rotate mode, and you can rotate the objects around. So again, we're seeing the same axes being updated in the details panel. And then if we press R, then we'll go into scaling mode. So we can scale this by clicking on one of the axes and just dragging the mouse with it. Alternatively, as you saw, you can set specific values down here if you wanted to. Okay, so what I'll be doing is between this clip and the next one, I will be getting a few more objects into the room ready for some of the demonstrations as we go through. Okay, so in this clip we have taken a further look at the Unreal Editor, and we've started seeing how we can add different things into the world, how we can move around the world and interact with things. And in this module we've created a brand new project, and we've seen how to add and remove projects from the Epic Launcher. We've taken a tour around the interface, so some of the most common things that you'll be using inside of the Unreal Engine. We've then started working from the existing project that I've created, and as I said, this is going to be the one that we'll be using for the remainder of the course. And we've taken a look at adding different props to the room scene that I've provided. And as I mentioned, I definitely recommend just playing around with and adding some of your own objects in, getting ready for the next module where we'll be looking at adding different materials and then applying them to our objects.